So once all the panelists have taken their seats, we can get started. And I want to start by, first of all, thanking Green Up and all of you for being here on a chilly evening in Davos. And I really liked what the person who started off this panel said. She said, it's a very warm welcome. And it is a warm welcome as we are sitting here in our cozy seats out of the cold that is outside. And of course, I'm sure the conversation we're going to have is going to heat things up even more. And we will have a very interesting conversation, really addressing some of the most critical issues that we as a global society face. And those are related to climate action and what we can do to mobilize capital to drive more capital to what we need to do to drive climate initiatives and efforts. So the way we are going to run this panel, I'll moderate it, but we are very lucky that we have three outstanding panelists here today. I'll start by asking each panelist to introduce themselves briefly. Then I'll set the stage by laying out, I think, 4 important issues that we should all be reflecting on with respect to climate action. And I'll ask each of the panelists to give me their views on those questions. And we'll go round robin style on those. That should take hopefully no more than 30 minutes. And that will give us plenty of time for all of you to ask your questions and of course, engage with the panelists and make it a much more interactive session. So with those as the ground rules, let me get started by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves. First, with my good friend, Samir Saran from the Observer Research Foundation.
Hi, I'm Samir Saran. I'm president of the Observer Research Foundation, which is a public policy think tank based out of Delhi, now with affiliates in the Middle East and Washington, D.C. We focus on very vast number of issues, but climate remains central to much of what we do. Climate, energy, resources are certainly definers of India's journey in the days ahead and its partnerships globally, so it's an important question for us.
Terrific, thank you. On to Christian.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Schmitz. I have been putting this together here with Pratibha, and I have known Raj Kumar also for quite a while. And today, actually, I put the pin on here. India, Japan. I'm not Japanese. I'm also not Indian. And I have never been to India so far. Maybe he says we have to change this. But I'm living in Japan, and there's a lot of activity also between India and Japan. Yeah, and I'm running an organization called PDIE, stands for Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem. And with this purpose-driven innovation ecosystem, what we're doing is bringing together purpose-driven innovators who are focusing on tackling environmental challenges to fix these different polycrises, climate, biodiversity, etc., by innovation. I'm looking forward to a great panel.
Thank you. Jochen.
My name is Jochen Wermuth. I come to you from Berlin, home of the free in Germany now, after the Americans have given up the position. So you're very welcome anytime. The German King Frederick the Great first invited Huguenots. My mother is Huguenot. And ever since we invited people to come to Berlin. We're now blessed by many, many Indians in Berlin and many Americans, many Russians, many Ukrainians, many Palestinians. Wonderful place. Anyway, I started out with physics, did math, economics, degraded to be a climate impact investor or an investor. I've actually upgraded in between from just investor to climate impact investor. And the way that worked is I was taken to the north of Russia once, where there was a river covered with 0.5 meter of crude oil. Every year, this much crude oil spills into the river. And we dug it up with shovels and quickly found out that you throw up after about half an hour. Went to the cancer hospital, saw people with 100 times higher cancer rates than a normal city. And then they took me to the embryo collection. And I saw 6-fingered babies, 2-headed babies. And I thought, really? Do I care to pay 1 cent less for my gasoline at the pump? And I cause this harm in the world. And that changed me from being just an investor making a hell lot of money to becoming an impact investor, to invest with positive impact. And we, together with Desmond Tutu, who gave me this pin here, built a movement based on the apartheid, divest from apartheid movement. 70% of the index was companies doing business with apartheid South Africa. our university, Brown University, divested, and Desmond Tutu came to us and said, Nelson Mandela is free today because you drew capital away from businesses doing business with apartheid. And so, 20 years later, we invited him to lead the divest invest movement, to divest from fossil fuels into climate solutions. Initially for moral reasons as described, but as market power came behind us, we went from 10 million to 50 billion today, over 40 trillion committed to divest and invest. And so I'm very happy to tell you today, I no longer have to wish you like a Jedi Knight, may the force be with you, but I assure you, the force is with us. The force is behind decentralized renewable energy, circular economy. It's driven, never mind what the orange guy says. And
Thank you very much, Jochen. And as I said, we are sure to have a sparkling conversation with these three very, very articulate and talented folks on the panel. And as I said, I'll just start by framing the 3 or 4 issues that we can discuss this evening. And so I think, what we should lay out as a framework for our discussion is really these 4 issues. Number one, how does the change that is happening in the geopolitical order affect climate action? What do you see? Does it inhibit? Does it accelerate? Does it stall? What is the impact of the change in geopolitics to climate action? Number one. Number two, given that many of the multilateral mechanisms that were thought of, including the Paris Agreement and COP and so on, have actually become quite paralyzed in a way and not much is happening. Can the coalition of the willing do more? Can they come up with new multilateral mechanisms, coalitions where more can be done? So that's question number 2. Question number 3 pertains to India and the global south, which is without the support of the global north, what can the global south do and how much support do they actually need from the global north to engage in meaningful climate action? And then finally, the area that I'm personally most interested in is how do we innovate when it comes to capital? How do we innovate combining, what the global north has, what the global south has to actually accelerate climate action, whether it's impact investment or other such instruments? So I think those are the 4 questions that we can discuss. Obviously, we'll finish in about 30 minutes, and then you can ask us whatever pointed questions that you are interested in. So let me first start with Samir. You, of course, study the global world order very, very closely. We can all agree that it is changing, as Jochen has pointed out. How do you see that affecting what we are trying to undertake as far as climate action is concerned?
So, there were 2 speeches that were given in Davos, one yesterday, one today, one by Mike Carney and one by Donald Trump. I would argue that both of them were very honest speeches. The first speech was an admission of hypocrisy and lack of real substantive action taken by those in power on anything that really mattered to humankind. That was Mike Carney, who admitted it yesterday in his speech, that those who were in charge did not do enough to serve the responsibilities that they had been assigned. Today's speech was very honest as well. It was, I don't care. And I will not do anything more than I wish to do. Both were very honest speeches, and that is the geopolitical reality that climate action has to confront. Hypocrisy on one end and selfishness and narcissism on the other end. And I think somewhere between the two, we have to find a space for action. And I think that's the geopolitical moment we are confronted with. The good news is, at least now the gloves are off and everything is now bared open. And we now finally know that there is no cavalry coming to save us, and we have to do it ourselves. We are in an IKEA store. If we want to save our planet, don't rely on your governments, because they created a sham called the Paris Agreement and refused to do anything beyond signing one piece of document. I think that is the reality that has now come to light. So that's the geopolitical moment. Now let me go a layer below that. Let me go a layer below this broad emphasis. Look, there are 4 conversations happening right now in geopolitics. 4 conversations, and all important for climate. The first, of course, all of us know, all of us cannot but know, it's Donald Trump talking to whoever he wants to talk to. I call it the conversation about dominance or re-establishing dominance. And that's a perverse conversation, and that's not going to have climate as one of its objectives. Let's be very clear. That is not going to have a planet as one of its objectives or goals. That's the first conversation, loudest, most prolific and most time-consuming and resource-consuming conversation has no climate in it, has no room for climate. The second conversation that is happening is a conversation where, surprisingly, and perhaps with a little degree of disbelief, you have China becoming the responsible and mature adult in the room. So it's kind of dysfunctional to imagine them in this role, but they are playing this role. And we'll have to see whether this could be that China moment where actually they realize that if they were to bear responsibilities of actors of the past and establish a certain degree of trust and affection with other countries, it could be their moment. And that's the second conversation. The third conversation I will not want to waste time on. It's happening between the US and China. And I suspect climate is again not going to be a feature. But the fourth conversation, which no one hears about, but which is perhaps the most persistent, is happening between the other 189 countries, who are neither China nor the US. You mentioned the G18 to me backstage. I think it is the rest of the world who is talking to each other, who is finding ways of partnering with each other, where climate, energy, resources, efficiency, SDGs, human well-being, health, agriculture, food security are actually the principal objectives of those conversations. So let's focus on the rest of the world rather than worry about what the big two are doing. That's my first advice to you. I will close here because I don't want to take too much time. But I think we have to be creative in the way we now arrange the map of the world. For example, Donald Trump is not interested in the Quad. For example, the Quad. The US, Japan, Australia, India. He's not interested in the Quad because it doesn't suit his imperious purposes, right? But I think Quad is still a good idea. Let's think about a climate Quad. Let's think about India, the Gulf, EU, UK, perhaps even China. Maybe if you were to combine UK and EU into one actor and add China, perhaps you can think about a 5. You could think about a climate 5 and bring Canada in, and the pension funds and infrastructure funds. So I think, one, we have to reconfigure the map of the world in our minds, and there is enough capital available in these 5, 6, 7 different geographies to actually continue to move the needle till better sense prevails in Washington, D.C., which is still, I think, 3 years away, right? I suspect Trump will have a long tail, so it's going to be a longer period of recovery for the US, and God bless them. Young country, they have to go through this tribulations and trials. Being an old 5,000-year-old civilization, I understand that it's too much to expect maturity from them, and they have to walk this journey. But I think right now, climate has to be a non-US, non-West, and non-power related conversation. It has to be about people, and it has to be led bottoms up. And it has to be a people's-led movement. It has to be a movement led by countries that are either the G18 or the rest of the world.
Fascinating, Samir. As always, very, very interesting to listen to your perspectives. Christian.
Yeah, so last year we went to New York, and we have this event called Future of Climate Summit. And then many people said, maybe climate, maybe you should get rid of the word climate. And then basically what we did is you mentioned being creative, of course. No? So we try to be creative, and we created an alliance in New York, the Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance, GRIA. And then a little bit after that, maybe not because of our event, of course, but in the US, there was a large funding enabled for regenerative agriculture. So, and that's something which is even in the US positive. Another positive example, I met the founder of the Blue Planet Alliance, Hank Rogers, in Japan recently. And he creates this coalition. And Hawaii, where he's from, has committed to be net zero emission by 2045. And following this example, there are already 13 US states which have already anchored this in their constitution. So, yes, so they have to do this, no matter if there is an orange man or not. we don't want to pronounce the name here, maybe. And when I went also to Davos, I received a list of words which are positive towards the orange man and which we cannot say, basically. So climate is one of these words. And in terms of geopolitics, of course, I mean, well, our economy is driven by short-term thinking, short-term profit. And nowadays, I mean, last year, AI was a big topic, and it's still the big topic. And then the other big topic is now geopolitical tensions and spending on defense. Defense tech funds are coming up, and people are shifting their money to get short-term profits and to get into defense, which is, I think, not a very good development. It's a dangerous development, playing with fire, basically. So, and then for AI, of course, we need energy, and we need data centers. There's a lot of things going on, building a lot of data centers, and the question is then again how to power these data centers. In America, drill, baby, drill, or let's get the coal-fired plants running again, and otherwise there are small modular nuclear plants, which could also be a solution for that. And then we tend to think that we can actually solve it with renewable energy, and that should be our pathway for the future.
Jochen, your perspective.
So back to geopolitics. So there was another speech actually by von der Leyen, and as thank you. So we had unfortunately not learned from German history, right? Chamberlain came to Berlin, to Munich to meet Hitler and tried to appease him, and he failed. And von der Leyen went to Scotland and fell to his knees and her knees and agreed to buy 750 billion of fossil fuels from Trump, and as a result was promised stable, low tariffs. And just 6 months later, she found out he just reneged on the rule of law.
Greenland was too attractive.
Yeah, well, anyway, so we believe that European values, or the values maybe we share with India or the world of the free, is love thy neighbor, compassion, bodhicitta, right? It is rule of law, and it is democracy, right? And as we share these values, I think we'll have a strong support. And I think that the key thing that happened in Davos was this speech. So von der Leyen, who'd been, I'm not going to say the word, but he's too friendly to him, has now said very clearly, enough is enough. Europe will now stand up. And she said very clearly, we have the biggest free trade zone with the Mercosur South Africa states. We hope to include India, the biggest, most populated nations, the UAE, Australia, New Zealand, and we start building a global coalition of the willing. And the key geopolitical power tool that I think we need to pull is something which Al Gore says he invented, not like the internet, this one he may have actually invented, which is the carbon tax and dividend. And that's a miraculous tool. Assume I exist thanks to the Oktoberfest, where my parents met. It's a religious Thanksgiving activity. It does involve some beer sometimes. Now imagine I give out free beer to the Germans. I know you guys wouldn't drink, but the Germans would drink all day long. And that is the situation with CO2. Economists will tell you, if you have a good that's not charged, it will be consumed with no end. It just makes no sense. Now, if we do charge 200 euros a ton, one estimate of the externality, and we assume 12 tons of emission per developed country, that means every month I cause 200 euros of damages on average. I take the money back, don't give it to the government, and give it everybody in the pocket. A family of 4 will have 800 euros in cash. And because 1% of the population consumes 50% of the CO2, 3/4 of the population will be richer. And then we come to the question, how does such a structure help the global south? But basically what happens is, I was so proud because I forgot to say what we do. We have a family office that invests, and we have venture funds and the German Sovereign Wealth Fund, which we invest across asset classes with positive impact on climate. I was very proud about a portfolio company that use electric car batteries to stabilize the grid. They earn enough money a year, 1,000 euros a year, to pay for the electric car. But I save 3 tons of CO2 for a 30,000 euro car. Now if I go to Africa, I find a woman most of the time, unfortunately, cooking on 3 stones. And I just put a metal cooker there. nothing intelligent. 12 euros, not 30,000, and I save 3 tons of CO2. Now, if I have a global tax on CO2, think of the investment. 12 euro invested, every year I earn 600 euros on the
No,
CO2.
Jochen, that's very interesting, and you're bringing up a very good point. I want to get Samir into this as well, which is this whole idea that can we create a coalition of willing with mechanisms where we can clear the global market for carbon abatement, right? For carbon mitigation. Samir, your thoughts on that?
2 short points. One on your point. I think you have raised an important issue. My carbon space, that means my poverty, is underwriting the market capitalization of all tech giants today who are riding the AI boom. They are building data centers, burning fossil fuels, creating market cap and stealing my development carbon. No, it's very important. If you are someone who's living in Africa, in parts of Latin America and much of South Asia, please understand your space to grow is being now converted into market capitalization of the big tech. So please understand, carbon tax on big tech. And I'm telling you, Trump's behavior might eventually lead to, and you know, Macron has been threatening it. I think Ursula von der Leyen hinted it might actually lead to serious digital taxation that is going to create, in some ways, like he said, a repatriation of profits for development activities. So I think that's something that we must think, and we must link your point with the AI point, because AI is a guzzler of carbon, and it is creating profits in a very concentrated fashion for a handful of companies around the world. And we must remain aware of this, that this is what is really happening. Our carbon is being stolen. There are T-shirts in Africa that my poverty is not your climate mitigation strategy. And I think, remember that T-shirt. My poverty cannot be your mitigation strategy, and that must be the basis of any international coalition or any international mechanism, right? That's very important. Gender. You on your point, and I'll leave it with you. Sorry, on your point, gender. Think about these 4 images. 10 years ago in India, as you drive from Delhi towards any suburb of Delhi, you would see a line of women carrying firewood, right? 5 years later, courtesy his government, you would see every month a bunch of women carrying a cylinder. They would not carry firewood every day, but they would carry a cylinder on their head once a month. 5 years later, courtesy, by the time he had left the government, you would see women carrying solar lamps and also actually becoming solar mechanics. They were called solar mamas. They were actually running solar workshops, right? You could see the transition of energy. What you did not see was the agency of the woman move at all. The woman was still the carrier of fuel. All over the world, a woman rides an SUV. Hydrocarbons drive a carbohydrate. In India, carbohydrate carries hydrocarbon. And unless that, and this is true, and please understand what I'm trying to say here. Humans are the mules. Humans are carrying hydrocarbons for the rich. The human mule has to go. There can be no mitigation or adaptation or development unless this equation is reversed. And therefore, I think when we talk about finance, we have to ask 3 questions. Is the last mile working? Putting big commitments into big banks is not important if the national pipelines don't have the capacity to redistribute to the last mile. So I think the last mile architecture is very important. Hence, I always tell people, do the deal on the last mile. Don't do it at the top. Otherwise, you will never have any movement where it's really needed. That's number 1. Number 2, and this is equally important, that this is a wicked problem. Climate or emissions never is going to be facilitated through a standalone solution. You will have to solve for a few issues to be able to actually achieve a mission. You mentioned cooking and emissions, right? Let me tell you about ecology. Very important. In a state in in Meghalaya, it's something that shocked me. I went to Meghalaya to hold a conference. I was told that there are trees in those villages in Meghalaya which have been assigned to families. So families have been made custodians of certain trees. Every year, someone comes and does the audit. If that tree still stands, family is given X amount of money into the bank. So conservation of trees is now in many ways seen as a carbon store, and therefore a value is assigned to it, and a family is given purchasing power. That purchasing power allows them to now procure perhaps former electricity and formal fuel for the family from other sources. So suddenly you see a virtuous cycle emerge where you price carbon, give a certain cost for it, and see a green performance emerge from citizen choices. And I think that's really important.
Very interesting, Samir. Jochen, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just a very boring technical points, but we spent lots of time in Europe creating CBAM. I know you're really excited. I got CBAM at the beginning.
And that's not an explosion, by the way. It's a trade barrier.
CBAM. So carbon border adjustment mechanism. So to have a carbon tax and dividend, you can't do it without having on your border controls. Otherwise, people come in and dump your steel without a carbon tax. Now, if we added India to the free trade zone of the European Union, or the vice versa, we would jointly have a CBAM. And that CBAM would allow you to introduce the carbon tax and dividend. And that would really be a powerful thing. I've spoken to the UAE. They are interested in doing this. Canada, of course, already has it. Sweden already has it. France already has it. But we could do it at the order of the level. And I think it's really very important for actually women. I grew up with a mother who had a PhD in mathematics from Harvard, and in Germany they thought she wasn't good enough for 30 years. She became professor at Harvard, at Princeton, at Oxford, in France, but not in Germany. So I care a lot about when my mother cried, she cried because men treated her badly. Now the carbon tax and dividend is also a solution for women around the world. Right? Because first of all, they no longer inhale 40 packs of cigarette equivalent from burning wood, right? Second of all, the women that are suffering most in Ukraine, or men of course as well, will suffer less because a carbon tax and dividend that only Germany imposes means nothing. But a free trade zone that includes India, that includes Australia, New Zealand, gets us to 30% of global GDP.
No, and it's completely workable.
Fossil fuel demand goes down, Russian income goes down, Iranian income goes down, Saudi income goes down, and women are liberated around the world. And I've heard that if we had 3 women on the panel, our level of testosterone would go down significantly, intelligence would go up, and as Obama said, within 2 years, the world would be fixed. So I really think carbon
that's
tax
very well put,
Jochen,
that's very well put. And let me just build on that, because for the G20, as Samir knows well, which was hosted in India, we developed a very interesting position paper and a proposal that we did in fact provide to the G20 Secretariat. Some of that was reflected in the Delhi declaration that happened in the G20 that was conducted in Delhi. And the idea there was very similar to what you're proposing, was to actually create a coalition, a climate coalition, where what would be done would be a tax that would be imposed on carbon, but and then the proceeds would go to those that were actually below, let's say, a median per capita carbon emissions. However, in return for that, an India or a Nigeria would have to commit to a net zero target. So they would see these capital flows that would come from taxing carbon in the global north, or just across the board, whoever was willing to play in that mechanism. But in return for that, you would also have to commit to a net zero target, a binding legal net zero target. And that's why it had much more teeth than, let's say, a Paris Agreement, which of course was just, whatever you were willing to commit to. So there are ways in which we can do it, right? There are definitely mechanisms that can be put together. But, and maybe this is the positive side of the change in the geopolitical order, rather than worrying about those that are trying to block this action, why not bring together the people that are willing to do it, the coalition of the willing, catalyze it and make it happen. Your thoughts on that, Christian? Do you think it's doable? Will the people of Japan support that?
Yeah, especially the people in Japan. In Japan, we have Shinto, and Shinto is one of the longest standing. I don't know if you can say.
Shintoism,
yeah, it's not a religion. It's like animism. So every tree, every thing, the river, the mountain, everything has a soul, basically. And there is this belief that we should be good ancestors. So we think about the next 1,000 years. And if you look at the corporate landscape in Japan, you have a lot of companies which are 300 years old, 400 years old, and which hopefully continue longer than that. And I think that Japan could do something more in this changing world order. And what is necessary for this, if you look at G7 or if you look at international events, you almost don't find Japanese people. Is there any Japanese person here in the audience, by the way? No. Okay, so they are not communicating very well, and I created also an initiative, Japan Global Leaders, to give them more confidence and to speak out and have responsible leadership, basically. And if some of these messages, which are prevalent in Japan, could also reflect back to the world, I think that would be a very positive aspect. And we discussed in the morning with Sandrine Dixon from the Club of Rome as well, that we have fossil fuels, we have the legacy systems on the one hand side, and then we have the whole new economy with innovation, with possibilities, with regenerative solutions. And it's being made difficult to shift to these new systems because the legacy systems put the policy measures are also made for these petrochemical systems. And we have to shift, we have to incentivize the new economy, and we have to divest from the old economy.
So Samir, you of course have been seeing a lot of research being done in this area of blended finance and mobilizing capital and so on. As you have seen that research and of course participated in many of these types of conferences, what are the 2 or 3 best sort of financial instruments that you think can be used to get capital from the global north, which is capital surplus, to the global south, which is capital deficient? What are the 2 or 3 best ideas that you've seen?
Look, the minister, Jayant knows most of the pathways. He's been very thorough in his research on what works. And I think, let me take a leaf out of his work that he had done with ORF over the past years, which I think really merits certain degree of serious scrutiny and adoption. The first, of course, is that are we doing enough with the patient capital that resides with so many of our institutions, from sovereign funds to pension funds? Are we enabling them to invest in manners in which they are both safe, but they also get returns that allow us to serve our populations, which are aging now, and we will need to service a much older demographic, and therefore end-of-life infrastructure costs, right? So are we doing enough? There's a win-win situation here, that if you can free up over $150 trillion of such capital in Europe through enabling legislation and through certain protections and insurance schemes and MIGA-like instruments, could be done through European, the credit guarantees could be done through the EU's own banks, or could be done in partnership with the World Bank, which is, by the way, showing keenness to really put credit guarantees on testosterone. Using the level in this room to add some into the credit guarantees. But if you could get credit guarantees and patient capital into play, that is obviously one big chunk of money that's available. But that's not the only one. I think the second one that we are beginning to see really come into play, and we were just talking about it, in many of these developing countries, is philanthropy capital. And they de-risk the initial period. The initial project risk is taken by philanthropy capital, and then it is blended with obviously more traditional sources of money. And I think that's obviously a very interesting instrument, especially in countries such as the fragile economies in Africa and in the island nations. And you're seeing philanthropy capital really come in because no one else is going to. So I think that's the second tool that is really beginning to. But the third is of course using the capital markets themselves. And I think since you have been in the business, green bonds and other new instruments are now being put into play by using the capital market itself, right? Through primary and secondary route. You are creating new instruments to surface, because we are no longer looking at 10 billion, right? We are looking at 200 billion a year for India alone. So we're looking at 2 trillion for India. We're looking at 8 to 10 trillion for the world in the coming decade, right? We are looking at literally $1 trillion a year if we want to supercharge our green transition.
No, that's exactly right. And you're 100% correct to identify the scale as being very daunting.
The scale is the important.
And we have an impact investor who every day, I'm sure, is making investing decisions about these kinds of ideas. Do you see the scale as being daunting? Are there ways in which we can get around it? What do you think, Jochen?
Yeah, so as I said, I think well, maybe lighten up this. Well, I don't know if we have the time, but imagine there's a bleeding person lying on the floor in front of us, right? And we're two sustainable ESG investors like Larry Fink. We'll say, this guy's bleeding. Let's not kick him. We do no harm. Okay, let's go. Now we're two advocates. They say, this guy's bleeding. Someone should do it. And you agree, someone should really do something. Let's have lunch, right? and the impact investor says, someone is bleeding. Let's go fix the guy, right? I mean, I don't even understand how anybody doesn't see the difference between sustainability. Unbelievable. It's just inhumane and it makes no sense. From an economic point of view, if you imagine quadrants, right, where up you have positive return and negative return, and to the right you have positive impact. A philanthropist accepts negative returns but does good. An impact investor does both positive impact and positive return, and that really does work. And we have, we have returned 20% or so per annum at our family office for 20 years. The Harvard and Yale endowment with an endowment type investment style has achieved 10% per annum, while the silly regulated European pension funds get to 3% per annum, which means nothing. They're invested in listed assets and are not invested as the Harvard endowment in 20% venture, 20% private equity, 20% infrastructure, 20% real assets. Once you do that, once you have real investments, you can have real impact. And that's the opportunity and the hope. Now, in terms of what I would love you to take home, is each of you is an investor as well. And believe it or not, you're also always an impact investor. If you give your money to your bank, and your bank finances a coal power plant or finances an oil refinery, you are causing these two-headed babies. So you can yourself decide to go to your insurance company, to your pension fund, and make a difference. And I cannot tell you the amazing stories we had. We came from 0 to 40 trillion commitments. And ABB, a trillion fund, said to me, well, you guys did this divest invest thing. All of a sudden, we get all these phone calls. How do I switch? How do I divest? I said, it's easy. You commit within 5 years, I divest. And I said to him, how many people actually called you? What do you think? Country of 6 million people, insured with ABB. One person. This is the first phone call they received. And then no pensioner in Holland ever thought of calling them. And then the CEO said, let me do a survey. How many of you pensioners in Holland would like your money to go to things that destroy the world? How many of you would like to divest from fossil invest? And 90% of the population says, of course I don't want to destroy this planet. So
Jochen, I'm going to have to cut you off because we need to give some time to the audience as well, and I want to give some time to Christian also. So Christian, are you financing any two-headed babies, or are you doing the right thing?
No, I mean, he also said that, of course, the consumer plays an important role, and what we choose as consumer and the awareness. I mean, what's driving us to choose what we buy, how we move, where we live, is of course depending on what we know, the education, and we could make better choices, and then there could be a kind of a movement which gamifies. That's also what we discussed in the morning. So that nowadays it's even incentivized, and there is how many billion? $900 billion available for incentivizing fossil fuel industry, but we don't have this for the new era, for the regenerative solutions, etc. So if we go in a supermarket and we can actually make decisions what we buy, how we consume, then this could be a big leverage, I think.
Yeah, no, terrific, Christian. So let me throw it open to the audience right now. Are you making good choices? Are you going to the supermarket and buying the right type of produce? Are you driving electric vehicles? I think all of us have the power to make a difference because we make choices every single day, and our choices then reflect in the world around us. That's essentially what all the panelists have been highlighting. We'd love to hear your perspectives. Any questions? Please stand up when you ask your question. I think we can hear you quite well. If you want to, there's a mic as well. If you want to ask a question, just very briefly tell us where you're from and then ask the question. No comments, please. Questions to the panelists. Short, simple, direct.
Hi, my name is Serhat Çiçekoğlu of Center Ventures. You mentioned about choices, and pick any country, it typically has 2 layers of capital, sovereign and institutional, and then private, family offices and such. And when you think around the world, most of those institutional and family offices invest outside of their countries. So I don't believe that the capital is locked. It's actually allocated to assets that are.
No, your question, sir.
I'm coming to that.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Short, simple, direct, because
so-
we have a time shortage, so that's why I want to get the questions.
So I'm trying to provide the context. So if that's the reality, how do you incentivize your government to actually invest in your country, or your family offices to invest in your country, rather than the countries that actually adversely affect what we need to do for the next 50
So
years?
to just rephrasing your question, you're saying, how can India make sure that domestic capital is going to these
It's
investments?
not an India question, but
No, I'm just saying as an example.
Can I have a quick
Yeah,
response?
please, of course.
Look, I agree with you, but I think that is a conversation on the margins. Let's look at the bulk. Let's look at let's look at the core of the issue. 80% of capital that is deployed for climate action does not leave the home country. That's a reality. Now, 80%, which basically means, as per the IMF study, that 85% of climate finance remained in the developed world in the last 5 years, which basically means that the front lines where climate mitigation and emissions have to be saved are being starved of funds required to actually mitigate climate disasters. So that is the big question here. What you're saying is true. There is leakage on the sides. But big money is still refusing to go. Why? Because the global financial architecture was designed to serve the growth of the North Atlantic community, which was the driver of economic transformation in the last century. Today, the drivers of economic transformation are Asia and Africa, but the financial architecture still is anchored to the Atlantic community. And I think unless you really rethink the financial architecture, what you are saying will be leakage and not necessarily the real problem. The real problem still is that climate finance does not leave home. It remains at home until climate finance becomes as outgoing as all of us who have come to Davos. It's not going to serve. I always jokingly tell people that Paris Agreement may have been a great success, but the banks never signed it. Get the banks and the capital to sign the Paris Agreement and move around the world and solve the problems globally, then we will have a climate.
Jochen, you want to add to that?
Very quick. I forgot to mention before that I think AI and tokenization really give us lots of power. We are now able to have individuals own a part of a tree in Africa and earn these fantastic returns that we have. So tokenization is a great way to allow people from this room to invest directly in India and have. Then of course we have currency risk, we have policy, political risks, but then we can have MIGA to help us.
Oh, excellent. Question from you, sir.
Can you hold on for the mic?
I'm Satya Raghu from India. We build nature economic zones. My question is, why are we still talking about climate as a separate conversation? Why is it not becoming a lot more integral to the very infrastructure planning of a country, the way we look at airports or the roadways? Where do you think the gap is in
Understood.
terms of money?
Christian, you want to try that?
Yeah, that's it's exactly what we also try to address with the Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance, so that we don't only focus on climate and emissions. We focus on biodiversity and nature, and building these city hubs with the surrounding bioregions, and then activating each of these cities, and then having this connected basically, and having an exchange, a knowledge exchange, and innovation exchange, so that people can know about what works and what doesn't work, so that we can build this kind of transition. And yesterday we were sitting here on the same panel, and we had infrastructure, we had innovators, and we had people who were talking about these kind of critical infrastructure.
Yeah, no, just to build on that, you're absolutely right. And increasingly, it's not just infrastructure, Raghu. It's development itself. So the real way to think about it is, how do we move towards sustainable prosperity, which includes all of this discussion that we were having around preserving our environment. And
For
our
example, I think we really need to rethink some fundamental financial assumptions of the past. I think it's time to discard the 25-year-old power purchase agreements. the 25-year long power purchase agreements. You should not be locking yourself into infrastructure, which is going to be actually leading to long-term, continuous, persistent emission for your economy. And I'm sorry, but many of our countries are doing precisely that even today. And by the way, their countries as well, my country as well. Yeah. We are signing new agreements.
Okay, next question. Yes, there's a
Can I
gentleman
just ask, are there
and
any
then I'll
women
come
in,
to you,
in this room? Because in my political party, no man is to speak unless a woman speaks first. So I don't know how that works here. But
a lady to ask a question. Is there a lady there who's asking?
Seems to be
there.
only male
so
audience. There's one.
Let's hand her the mic because we need some of those voices also. And then I'll come back to you. Yeah.
So my name is Orshi Paskan. I'm based in Switzerland. I'm a tech entrepreneur, family office owner, and now looking into wealth management because of this question. So my very concrete short question is, how can we make as leaders sure that climate and sustainability is not a word anymore, and it's a no-brainer that we invest, it's a no-brainer that we have these innovations, and it's a no-brainer that this African lady is an entrepreneur and impact investor, because I think, and you are the experts, what business models do we need?
So Jochen has the answer. Jochen.
No,
it's really working, and it's not only...
No, I'm sure he's looking at all those models. Jochen, what have you found that works?
No, but as I said, I think this 12 € steel cooker really killed me, right? So thank you. I think we need to find more people like you, people that say, let's get together, let's pool our resources, let's collect capital, tokenize these tiny investments, and scale them up. I think if we can make the cost of transaction much lower, right, to get the 12 € cooker delivered. I am very convinced today that the market force is behind us, the force is with us, and we can do it. There is no question. And there are people, I have a few examples of companies that are deploying these cookers. I'm no offense to India now, I'm going to say something wonderful, Pakistan, right? Unbelievably, without any government intervention, some YouTubers made it clear to the Pakistani population that if you just buy yourself a solar panel, in the equivalent of Lidl in Germany, the local shop, they increased their solar capacity by 50%. In an island like El Hierro, we took down...
Market forces work. I think that's what Jochen is saying.
But we have to,
so anyway,
sell another capital.
Jochen, because we want to give people time to ask questions.
There's a mic there.
Yeah, next, but you should just grab Jochen after the session. We have a reception afterwards, after our next panel, and I'm sure he'll give you lots of good business ideas and investment ideas. Yes, the gentleman there.
There's a lady there.
Oh, there's a lady there. Yeah, terrific.
Hi, sorry. My name is Dini. I come from Belgium, but I spend a lot of my time in India. And I do a lot of work in research and education. What I feel and what I heard slightly is that there is still this perception of a different layer or a different approach. And what I find very interesting every time I travel to India is that the culture is so embedded, and the net positive work that has been doing is so amazing. And I think that a lot of capital is going to places that maybe are working on old perceptions. How do you see this?
Samir, do you want to try that?
The question is that, are we seeing a cultural shift in India, which is pro-environment, pro-climate, is that what you're saying?
No. You've never been to India, but we are talking about investments into India, or investments into Asia, or investment into Africa on information which is maybe not as up-to-date as it should be.
Look, if you are saying that perhaps the stories from many of our lands are not well known to investors globally, I would concede it's true. And I think it's equally responsible for us to be telling the stories, as it is for investors to be actually discovering those new geographies that can create sustainable investors, because they have the agency, right? I'll give you a very quick example. Let me just end with this example. Swiss Re chairman once told me that every year I go up and I promise my board and my AGM, my annual general meeting, that we are going to move X% of the portfolio to sustainable destinations. He says, every year I fail because my fund managers don't know how to find sustainable destinations. So we keep talking about doing capacity building in the global south. We need to do capacity building in the global north so that we can understand what new sustainability means. A very interesting point.
Very well said. Very well put. Yes, the gentleman, I know we've been waiting for your question.
It was always ladies first. Okay, so Chandra Nagpal, originally Indian, but been here 20 years in Europe, in Switzerland 15 years. My question, maybe if I could say, is I'm working with the business leaders across Europe and India as well. The geopolitical crisis and the way political leadership is behaving seems to be like becoming a kindergarten and like a trust deficit issue. Public institutions to kind of business leaders and public institutions to citizens. How do you plan to bridge that gap? Not the global south to global north gap, but globally.
Well, I'm not sure that really pertains to climate as much as it does to politics, but Christian, maybe you might want to take a crack at it?
The question was how do we bridge the gap? The trust deficit. That's actually a very difficult question, I think, in this current environment, which I often call a VUCA scenario. You know what that means? So, and VUCA comes from the military. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And in these kind of situations, you have to stay calm, and you have to make the right decisions. But what gives us trust? That's always a question. So maybe we had a science fiction author at one of our events. She is also a professor for sociology. She wrote a book called Infomocracy, and it projects into the future where the world doesn't anymore consist of nation states, but it's platforms and people who actually exchange information and who are more similar and trust each other. So I think that, for example, building these...
Talking about Zuboff. Talking about Zuboff's book.
Malka Older is a... Malka Older. You know her. Okay. Yes. Great. Yeah.
I would recommend driving licenses. In Germany, for example, you can't drive without a driver's license. But you can be finance minister without ever having known 1 + 1 is 2. Unbelievable. Driving license for politicians.
As a former finance minister, I can tell you I know my arithmetic. But anyway, in any case, we're rattling along really well here, questions, but we haven't gotten any questions from this side. Anybody here who wants to ask a question? A lady preferably. Anybody? No? All right. The gentleman, oh, there's a gentleman.
I already have the mic.
But let's get it over this side. We'll get you your question, but I want to balance it over on this side. The gentleman with the beard.
The mic is here.
Yeah, he's all set. Then your question, sir.
Please. Go ahead.
So good evening to all. Wonderful session, wonderful panel. I'm from India. I represent IFA Sustainable Steel Manufacturing Association as a president. We have 1,800 steel.
Your question, sir.
Yeah. We have 1,800 steel We discussed everything, but about the manufacturing side, I want to bring to your notice that we are very much keen and interested with the transition phase, but the problem is affordability.
So you're saying, how do you make green steel affordable? That's your question? All right, Samir.
We are coming out with a report on, especially on medium enterprises, small and medium enterprises, basically those who are feeding into large supply chains globally, not only in India, but global supply chains. We are coming up with an idea for a PLI, a performance-linked incentive for SMEs that will actually give you those, where the incentive is tied to actually the green transition. So they actually are underwriting your ability to become a green manufacturing hub and then tie yourself into the European supply chains because the CBAM is kicking in. So to be able to participate in a world where you're going to be tariffed if you emit, we want to be able to give incentives. So I think that is something that we should be thinking about.
And I think the last question of the day over there. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Goran Jeras. I'm originally from Croatia, but I manage international team piloting growth agnostic community banking model. I have two questions, very short.
We'll just get one question because we have to finish up.
How can we deal, we were talking on the panel about investments, but how we address the very fundamental issue that investments mean that there is return, and the whole fact of charging interest and return is actually mathematically demanding.
No, we all understand as investors that we have to get return. So Jochen, are you making money on your investments?
Very much so, yes. But and also in green steel, just to say, and we haven't mentioned something about banks. I think you saying the bank. My father always says, "Why don't banks just finance stuff?" And we quote Bertolt Brecht, who wrote the Three-Penny Opera. To rob a bank is nothing. A real professionally, with your exclusion, Goran. opens the bank, right? so we need really venture capital. We need people who take risks. And I need to remind you that if you just have 10,000 euros or just 50,000 euros, you can really make a big difference. We're in the middle of financing a green hydrogen factory, 100 million factory, and it's insufficient capital of 50 or 100,000 euros. So please think of yourself of being able of really making a big difference. You all have the power in your hand. The force is with us, but you've got to get yourself into the driver's seat after you get the license.
So on popular demand, no Raj, I'm sorry, it's 8 o'clock, we got to finish up. On popular demand, we'll have Samir have the last word.
So here is the case, a genuine case. 10 years ago, we built something called the Bombay Stock Exchange Green Exchange, where we actually listed a bunch of companies that were exhibiting green behavior. And we had a complex methodology to assess them, and we put them alongside the Sensex, which was the outstanding 30 companies that were defining India's economic journey, and we put the Green 25 alongside it. Each year, we have outperformed the Sensex by 20 to 25%. If you are green, it means you are good governance. If you are green, it means you know how to manage resources better. If you're green, it's a proxy for being a better governed institution. Green means better governance. If you have green standards, you are generally likely to give greater stakeholders.
And Samir, so finally the last word should be the color of money is green. Thank you all.
And the...
From Davos to the world, this is Regeneration.
Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. From extractive to regenerative.
Please don't leave. We're having a second panel in just a few minutes. So make yourselves comfortable and stick around. Thank you.
From extractive systems, taking it all to regenerative futures where ecosystems call from short-term profit, blind to the cost, to long-term value. Nothing is lost from concrete thinking, disconnected minds to living cities where nature and humans align. From separation, fear and division to collaboration, trust and shared vision. Global Regeneration Alliance. From extractive to regenerative, we rise. From death to life, we regenerate. Restore the systems, it's not too late. From depletion, burnout, running dry to renewal, abundance, letting life multiply. Cities as labs, be your regions connect. Knowledge and capital, moving with respect, not just talk. We activate, this is the decade where we choose our fate. Not innovation, regeneration, not isolation. Collaboration, not the status quo, transformation. This is a regenerative renaissance. Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. From death to life, we regenerate. Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. Join the GRIA Alliance. We regenerate. Be a good ancestor. GRIA. Yeah. From Davos to the world, this is regeneration.
Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. From extractive to regenerative, we rise, we rise. Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. Join the GRIA Alliance. We regenerate.
From extractive systems, taking it all to regenerative futures where ecosystems call from short-term profit, blind to the cost, to long-term value. Nothing is lost. From concrete thinking, disconnected minds, to living cities where nature and humans align. From separation, fear and division, to collaboration, trust and shared vision.
Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. From extractive to regenerative, we rise, we rise.
From death to life, we regenerate, restore the systems, it's not too late. From depletion, burnout, running dry, to renewal, abundance, letting life multiply. Cities as labs, be your regions connect. Knowledge and capital, moving with respect, not just talk. We activate, this is the decade where we choose our fate.
Not innovation, regeneration, not isolation, collaboration, not the status quo, transformation. This is a regenerative renaissance. Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. From death to life, we regenerate. Global Regenerative Innovation Alliance. Join the GRIA Alliance. We regenerate.
Be a good ancestor. GRIA.
Okay, we're going to get started with the second panel now. So please find a comfortable theater seat. And we'd like to invite our panelists onto the stage. Yes, we need. Thank you. Ms. Jain, Mr. Bharath. Mr. Jindal is running a bit late. He will join us in a moment. Mr. Tanti and Mr. Sinha, again, please. You're welcome to join. Thank you.
We have a tough act to follow after the last panel. I think, you know, it was a substantive discussion, but very entertaining. So I am going to promise to keep this a little more serious, to just remind ourselves just how serious the issue really is. But, you know, the previous panel is so accomplished that, you know, we can let them have fun with the topics. So thank you. And I apologize for not having more women on the panels. it's something we will definitely fix next year. It's completely my fault.
So, and Pratibha, may I just interrupt? We have Uday Khemka here as well. He's one of the leaders when it comes to climate finance.
I know. Thank
and
you for
he
coming.
he just let me know of a couple of days ago that he's available also. I think we should invite him on the panel. Please come, Uday.
Can we arrange a chair?
Yeah, of course we can.
Yes, please. Thank you. It would have helped if Mr. Khemka was a woman, but
Well, my inner woman. Let me tell you about that.
yeah.
I can tell you when I come from Berlin, all he needs to do is declare his intention. If he feels like it's okay.
We can keep it him in part.
I'll give you my pronouns in a minute.
Yeah, let's put it there because you want to keep it with the photos. Sorry.
Okay.
We can have. Okay, so I have an amazing panel with us today. We cut across policy, politics, finance, and people who've actually built businesses that have delivered and delivered profitably to show proof of concept for what we are talking about. I think that is the most important aspect of it, as Johan was mentioning in the previous panel, that it's about doing good, but ultimately you also show, and these gentlemen have shown, that this is also about economics. Ultimately, we will see that the returns, and Johan was mentioning this, that the borrowings for US is much higher than for Europe, on the back of the green growth that they have been financing. And that's the future. And these gentlemen in India are really, putting the money to the discussion that we are having. On that note, let me introduce the first panelist, Mr. T.G. Bharath, who's the Honorable Minister for Industries and Commerce, Government of Andhra Pradesh. He is going to start with a keynote address on behalf of the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who was originally supposed to be here but couldn't make it for certain important conflicts. Andhra Pradesh is a state that Mr. Naidu is visionary Chief Minister who has really led from the front, not only welcoming businesses into the state, but creating a very positive environment both for business and climate-driven businesses. And therefore, we are very lucky to have Mr. Bharath to give the keynote speech on behalf of the Chief Minister, if you please, sir.
Actually, Chandrababu Naidu Garu was supposed to come, but I think it was in the last minute that he couldn't make it. It was some other arrangements that he had to go. So I'm just representing our Honorable Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu Garu here, and took the notes from their team, and I thought I should share what his thoughts are there. So ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to be here at Davos and address this distinguished gathering. I speak today under the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Sri N. Chandrababu Naidu Garu, whose governance philosophy has consistently emphasized long-term vision, technology-led development, and institutional credibility. This approach strongly shapes how Andhra Pradesh thinks about growth, resilience, and investment. In Andhra Pradesh, resilience begins at the planning stage. Let me begin by simplifying what climate resilience and regeneration mean to us in Andhra Pradesh. For us, this is not about slogans or distant targets. It is about how we plan development so that growth continues even under stress. whether climate-related, economic, or global, under the Chief Minister leadership, resilience is embedded at the planning stage. We integrate land use, infrastructure, energy systems, water security, and ecosystem considerations together under statutory planning frameworks with a long-term horizon of 25 to 30 years. This approach is especially critical for a coastal state with more than 1,000 kilometers of coastline, where climate risks directly affect infrastructure, livelihoods, and investor assets. For example, when we develop industrial parks and corridors, we do not simply allocate land. We plan power availability, water security, logistics connectivity, and climate safeguards together right from the start. This ensures that industrial assets operating for decades remain stable, competitive, and protected from future shocks. That is how long-term asset value is preserved. In clean energy, ours is a central pillar of our development strategy. Under the Chief Minister's vision, Andhra Pradesh is building clean energy at scale, not at standalone sector, but as core economic infrastructure supporting industry and cities. Under the integrated clean energy roadmap, we are targeting around 160 gigawatts of clean energy capacity across solar, wind, and pumped storage. This represents an investment opportunity of nearly $120 billion, with the potential to create over 750,000 direct and indirect jobs. For industry, this scale matters. It provides long-term access to reliable and affordable power, reduces exposure to fuel price volatility, and improves the global competitiveness of manufacturing assets over their full life cycle. When clean energy is planned alongside industrial corridors and urban development, it strengthens resilience and significantly enhances investor confidence. For us, nature is not separate from infrastructure, it is part of it. Andhra Pradesh has extensive mangroves, wetlands, and natural coastal buffers, which we are integrating directly into port-led industrial corridors and coastal urban development. These ecosystems protect ports, industrial zones, and cities from storm surges and flooding, while also supporting livelihoods and local economics. When nature-based solutions are planned as part of economic infrastructure, they reduce long-term damage, lower maintenance costs, and protect asset value. That is how nature becomes scalable and economically rational for long-term capital. The core role of government, as Honorable Chief Minister consistently emphasizes, is to reduce risk for long-term capital. Long-term investors are willing to commit capital for 20 to 30 years, but they need certainty, clear land, stable policy, reliable infrastructure, and predictable timelines. That is where government plays its important role. We do the hard work upfront, land aggregation, clear policies, time-bound approvals, and assured access to power and water so that private investors can focus on execution, innovation, and scale. When uncertainty is reduced, capital inflows naturally. Execution, credibility, and transparency forms the core of our policies. This approach is already delivering results. Projects in Andhra Pradesh are moving quickly from intent to approval and into execution. This is not accidental. It is the outcome of governance systems designed for speed, transparency, and accountability. Driven from the top, digital platforms like Aware provide real-time data and early warnings for climate and infrastructure risks, allowing government to respond faster and more transparently. For investors, this means risks are visible, monitored, and managed. Not hidden. Transparency builds trust. Our message to global investors is simple and direct. If you are looking for a partner that offers long-term integrated planning, clean energy at scale, nature-integrated infrastructure, policy certainty and speed of execution, and leadership committed to reform and delivery in Andhra Pradesh under the leadership of Chandrababu Naidu Garu is ready to partner with you. We are not seeking short-term capital. We are looking for long-term partners who want to create durable value over decades. Let me conclude with a belief that guides our approach to development and governance. Growth that is resilient is growth that is investable, durable, and future ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's a very clear roadmap that the Andhra Pradesh government has, put in place, and almost there's a red carpet for climate investors. So that is very, very encouraging. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring in the rest of our panelists at this stage, and let you introduce your work yourself, along with the question on the first time actually I heard about regeneration versus mitigation was in this room last year with PDIE leading the discussion, and I'm thankful for that. And I realized the importance of regeneration versus mitigation because it's no more just about carbon constraints. We are seeing that lives are getting affected to an extent that we have never seen before. We are seeing Earth getting affected to an extent that we have never seen before. I think the human civilization is at stake, and the conversation we are having is therefore that important. And at Eversource Capital, we've been able to raise India's largest climate impact fund. And now we're in the stage of raising our second fund. And based on the first, $700 million plus that we raised, we've been able to generate billions of dollars that have gone into the Indian climate sector. If you add up all the equity and debt we've raised on at the portfolio company levels too, based on the initial 700 million. And out of that, in our initial 700 million, it's the concessional capital that we got that got us to, start raising the rest of the capital. So really, the model for capital raising, we've seen firsthand how it impacts what you're able to do in a society. In fact, we've built businesses from scratch that didn't exist, but the demand existed. For example, we have the largest fleet of EV buses that run in the country today. We have largest fleet of EV commercial cars that run in the country today. So the importance of raising that financing, I just want to understand, what you have seen as models that work in your businesses, and where are the constraints? Because, as we raise the second fund, we are also seeing the constraints. But really wanted to understand from you, where you see the constraints and where do we go from here in terms of not just mitigation, but regeneration. Mr. Khemka, if you can introduce yourself first.
Sure, my name is, firstly, thank you very much, Jayant. I thought I was coming to sit in the back row. So I'm delighted to be with such distinguished company, but extremely surprised, and it's an unexpected honor. Delighted to be here. My name is Uday Khemka. I'm vice chairman of an Indian business group called the Sun Group. It's a 120-year-old business group. I head up our energy transition division. I see some friends in the audience. I also have been the managing trustee of a foundation that has focused on climate change and the energy transition, actually more climate change in the first decade and a half, since 1992. It's been a long 33-year-old journey. I'd rather actually answer your question, if I may, at a more systemic level. But nevertheless, I want to first start by congratulating you at Eversource, because you really are the flagship for the country in what you're doing. There are other earlier stage venture firms and so forth. Congratulations on what you've achieved. It's really something to be proud of. And I wish you going from 2 billion to 20 billion within the next 2, 3, 4 years. And encourage everyone here. I'm going to get in trouble with the SEC. I should say I've got nothing to do with them, so I'm allowed to say all these nice things. Okay, good. Now, that having been said, the real problem, I've been working with sovereign wealth funds and pension funds through our family foundation since 2005. First with a group called the Pension 8 with King Charles, and then with a group called the Institutional Investors Roundtable. All of these are sovereign or sub-sovereign funds. And the idea was to get them together to look at how to invest in green infrastructure and co-invest at scale. As you know, these huge asset owners come through funds like Eversource and sometimes invest directly into platforms. The question was, why couldn't we increase? As you know, we need an extra $1 trillion a year into developing countries. Why can't we get there? Or Jayant always talks about the 100 to 200 billion that we need extra from international markets. And he and I talk often about this because the issue is, quite rightly, the minister said, and I really appreciated your comments because what you said was absolutely spot on, that what we need is long-term capital. And the good news is there is a lot of long-term capital. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds that are not looking for venture investment returns or private equity. They're looking for yield. They're looking for steady growth. And there's a huge amount of it. And it hasn't found enough investable infrastructure opportunities to manage to balance the pension profile of its obligations and liabilities. So India offers a fantastic opportunity. So why not? And the answer, I think, is the same all over the world. For many decades, I thought it was about bringing all these institutions together and getting them to co-invest and learn. And I realized that I'd been incredibly stupid. It's nothing to do with that. It's about de-risking the environment and de-risking in the way the minister said, very importantly. And so after 20 years of work, we are suggesting, and I can talk about it later because I don't want to hog the airtime, a 3x5 framework, 5 stages of de-risking and bringing institutional investors, including fund managers and asset owners, together with industry, together with government, to de-risk in a very systematic way, sector by sector, state by state. And we can come back to that if we have more time. That reduces the perceived risk, that reduces the real risk, so that the available returns match the asset requirements in terms of risk-adjusted yield.
Yeah, and that requires long-term capital.
And it requires an engagement with the real economy and finance, not just finance or blended finance. Thanks.
Mr. Tanti, if I can just modify that question a little for you in terms of, what is the public-private partnership framework that we can look at especially for renewables, since you're in that space for financing and growth?
Sure. Just before that, firstly, I just wanted to share my thoughts on Andhra Pradesh. I think since the minister is here, we have been active for last 15 years since Sir's first term. And, Chandrababu ji kind of is so passionate about renewables, and he got us there and said, let's make it happen. What do you need? And let's kind of get it cracking. And I think since then, the kind of work that we've been able to do in Andhra Pradesh and the sheer vision and the commitment to make things happen, I think we have amongst some few such CMs today available in India with that kind of vision. And he runs it like a CEO office, So, congratulations, sir. And I think you have seen the kind of things that you spoke about. Not many chief ministers in India are driving it that way. So thank you so much for that. And also to just pick up from what Mr. Khemka was saying, I think this is one of the crux of the challenge that we find on ground. The problem is that today we have, like the renewable energy projects that we build, typically they are 25, 30 years project. Whereas the financing that is existing, especially the equity capital that's coming in for those, are all short funds. So they are a 5, 7, 10 years fund. And effectively it doesn't work because the whole business model is of such nature that we are not able to get the right capital. So I think if we can sort that issue of bringing long funds which match the tenure of the projects, I think we can really scale up very fast. And we're finding that churning of assets with that short term has a very different objective, and we're not able to bring long-term capital into the thing. And to the point of, the partnerships, I think there are definitely there are tougher areas where probably we can have more government and private partnerships, as well as, different innovative financing models, especially for the pre-development work, the entire project developments which are happening, these are not financeable. And I can't get capital for that. We have to put our own capital to move that. And it takes a while to kind of get that. So if we can do more work in that space where we can partner with government, like say on the grid, because today, like in most of the things, the private sector is running ahead, but the grid is running behind. And so we can do the other development of our projects and other things, but if grid is not going to be there, then our projects get delayed and that capital is stuck, and then the whole performance, everything breaks off. And so I think it's very important that the entire infrastructure which needs to get done has to pace up with the commissioning of those projects. And we are finding this as one of the key bottlenecks today. Of course, a lot of work is happening, but now post the situation where individual states are also building up their own RE plans and their own green plans, I think it's very important that if we can have more stronger private partnerships in that area and look at some innovative financing models which we can get some long-term capital at government level to do such kind of development, then I think we can speed up some of the work over there. So.
Thank you. Can I welcome Parth Jindal? He just stopped a $10 billion signing to come here. I'm kidding. But it could totally be true. But JSW Group has done amazing work in terms of so many sectors: green steel, green mobility, water stewardship, waste management. The previous panel discussed, how this is not just about doing the right thing or the good thing, but the economics of it. But as first movers, we've seen how difficult it can be. You have unproven technologies. You have policy issues. What are the key challenges you think you've faced, you've overcome, and where policy should take us? And then we can get Mr. Jayant Sinha on a policy perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I think. For a country like India, the biggest challenge that we have is related to land. I think land acquisition is one of the preeminent issues across any of the industries that we are in. If I look at energy, if I look at renewable energy, I think it's the evacuation of the energy which is a very big challenge. So it's building it's not just building the project, it's actually not so, once you have the land under your control, it's not so difficult to actually build a solar park or a wind farm. But it's actually evacuating that energy for us, which is causing the maximum amount of delay. Some of that is actually connecting your farm to the grid, which is the low voltage connections, for which you have to go through a myriad of villages. And you have to talk to each and every farmer, each and every villager, each and every village leader, because India, unlike China, which grew exponentially, is a democracy, and we can't do anything, forcefully. And the second is obviously the grid and the challenges with the grid. So that's one. Second is, as we are a developing country, no one is willing to pay a premium for green. So it is up to the manufacturers to actually make it cost effective. So today, even when I talk to we make steel, we make cement, obviously energy, but when I talk about steel and cement, even when I talk to the premium real estate developers of our country, who are selling homes in Mumbai for greater than $1,000 a square feet, even they are not willing to pay a premium for green steel or green cement. They're saying, okay, as long as you can match the price of conventional steel or conventional cement, we will give you preference, but we will not pay a premium. So I think that's a challenge. But right now, at least, what we're seeing is that everybody, the industry, the government, is aware of the challenges. And the good news is that every year India is getting better. And when I say India is getting better, if you look at the statistics of how much renewable energy we're able to add every year, the number is on the rise. This year, India is expected to add about 37 gigawatts of renewable energy. Last year, that same number was about 31 gigawatts. So the number is on the rise. If you look at electric vehicle penetration, which is another very key area that we are focused on, it's gone from 2% last year to about 4% this year. But we have to remember that only 8% of Indian households own a car. And that's why India is a one-car household. And it will remain a one-car household for a very long period of time, maybe another decade, maybe another 2 decades. We don't quite know how quickly India will move from a one-car household to a 2-car household. So a family that's going to own one car will not own an EV unless the charging infrastructure is in place. And that's why we as a company, while we're pushing EVs in the major cities of India, in upcountry towns and cities, we believe that the right technology for India is plug-in hybrids. So it's about industry getting innovative, and obviously capital. I mean, at least we haven't felt any challenge in getting capital. Bank finance is available, and long-term project finance is also available. Yes, on the equity side, it is difficult. We need to keep diluting. We are publicly listed, so we do a QIP, raise equity, deploy that, raise more equity, deploy that, and then hopefully you're just hoping that you have enough free cash flow to sustain more capacity addition. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's the cost of that capital that really hurts at least the startup businesses who can't find equity, and then the cost of capital is too high. So all the issues that the industrialists mentioned border on policy. How do we do green labeling? How do we create more capacity?
Yeah, thank you, Pratibha. And first of all, let me acknowledge the wonderful comments from all the panelists, particularly the minister, who's laid out, I think, an outstanding roadmap for encouraging investment, particularly in sustainability in Andhra Pradesh. I wish all the other states follow that very excellent roadmap. Now, you're exactly right, Pratibha, that it is the job of policy to make it possible to de-risk these investments, because as we all know, and let me just reiterate that, the fuel for sustainable investments is capital. Because we really don't have a fuel that's running a solar plant or running an electric vehicle, by and large. I mean, of course, you have electricity. But the OPEX-CAPEX trade-off is so different for most of sustainability investing from fossil fuel investing that the single largest cost input into sustainability investments is actually cost of capital. And how do we reduce the cost of capital? There are two ways of doing it. One is by de-risking, because remember, risk costs money. If the risks go up, then the returns go up, requirement for returns go up. So if we de-risk, then people are willing to invest not at 18 or 20% net dollar, they'll invest at 12 or 15% net dollar. Cost of capital goes down, we get more investments going in. So de-risking is the number one lever from a policy perspective, and again, Andhra Pradesh demonstrates that very, very well. Number two, we have to introduce predictability in what we are doing. And predictability means you get paid on time, the policies are stable, and they remain in place for 20 or 30 years, so you can recoup your investment. So predictability also is extraordinarily important. So we need to do that as well. And number three, particularly if you're investing in the global south, where your currencies are subject to a lot of macroeconomic volatility, that's not in the hands of a company. That's based on your macroeconomy. Now, in India, we've done a super job on our macroeconomy. Our currency has been relatively stable. But many of the other global south countries, like an Indonesia, like a South Africa, or a Brazil, have a lot more currency volatility. The currency depreciates 4, 5, 6% a year. So if you're a global investor looking at it from a hard currency perspective, you have to factor that in. And so in domestic terms, you need to add 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% more in terms of returns so you can deliver the hard currency returns that investors are looking at. So your macro management and hedging for these kinds of currency risks becomes very, very important. You reduce that currency volatility, you provide low-cost hedging, you produce and deliver on predictability and on de-risking on things like land and the grid, as Parth and Girish have mentioned. That's when you start to see large-scale flows of capital. Now, even that's not easy. Because let's say you do de-risk everything. Let's say you reduce currency volatility. you will still find global investors, and we hear this all the time because now I'm at Eversource Capital and we're raising money and looking to global investors. People will say, if I can get 15% net investing in a data center in Virginia or investing in a solar power plant in Spain, why would I invest at 10 or 12% net in India? So it's not just that you de-risk, you reduce the cost of capital, you do all of that. If you really want the large-scale capital flow, Samir spoke about trillions of dollars, that's what's required. Jochen was very kind to say, philanthropic capital, impact investing. But there's not enough impact investment or philanthropic capital available in the world today to deal with what we need to do as far as climate and sustainability is concerned. We need commercial capital. And if you need commercial capital, that's going to be benchmarked against giving money to Meta or Microsoft and, having them put up their big stalls here and everything else, saying, come invest in us because we're going to give you 15% dollar net. That's a hard benchmark to meet. So we need to work together. We need to think through how we can unlock those large-scale capital flows. Policy plays a very important role, but entrepreneurship and innovation, which Parth and Girish, Uday in some of his investments have also demonstrated, we need that innovation, we need that business model scaling, ecosystem scaling, so that we can actually deliver those returns. That's the only way we'll unlock those kinds of large-scale capital flows.
So, Minister, if I can come back to you based on these comments, what is that one policy change you would focus on, especially since you're looking to attract, green capital and green investments?
So basically, if you see the pump storage that has happened, I don't know about people here know about the pump storage that is done in Andra Pradesh, which is, in the peak time. So this is generated. The pump storage is like solar plants are there. They pump it back and then they run the hydel plant in the evenings. So as you all know that in the peak time, the energy, the requirement is huge. And this was encouraged by Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu in 2017. So after this, now there are a lot of pump storage plants coming up in India and I think in the world also. The Greenco company that has started, now they are running it very successfully. So we encourage a lot of green energy, especially solar or windmill, all this. And we have a huge target, huge megawatts that we want to do it in Andhra Pradesh. Basically, from green energy, we want to do green ammonia, green hydrogen, all this. Even recently, before coming to Davos, we have put in a foundation stone for green ammonia. So the green energy that generates is in Rayalaseema. We want to do a corridor to the coastal where you pump the green energy for green hydrogen and green ammonia. So these are all happening, and the great thinker, as you all know, Honorable Chief Minister is a visionary, and he thinks at least 20 years ahead of time, and that is why we have all the pump storage capacities that are going to be built in India are going to be the maximum in Andhra Pradesh.
That's great to hear. Parth, if I can come back to you, since you're at the forefront of a lot of these innovative products that need to come, as the panelists have been talking about, what is that important aspect that you look at in terms of whether innovation or whether long-term sustainability? And I'm sure you work very closely with the government on all these initiatives. What is the thought process that is giving you that confidence and comfort to you're deep into this at a time where there is technology uncertainty, there is storage capacity issues, and a lot of other capital and policy issues. What is it that you look for when you're starting a project in terms of its viability and you putting in capital?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we look at is the counterparty risk. So if you look at any renewable energy project in India, you are through SECI, which is the Government of India body. They have in many ways de-risked the payment collection process, which if you look at India's history with the problems that the state discoms have had, that was a huge risk earlier. But now through the SECI tendering process, when you win a SECI tender, it is SECI who then liaises with the various state governments and gives you a 25-year long PPA, which is basically Government of India sovereign backed. So mentally, there is no doubt, or there is less doubt, and there is less uncertainty in collecting your money from the government, which is really helped in a long way. Now, if you look at the project side, if you look at, let's say, solar, let's say wind, you like Jayant Uncle said, you're exposed, if you're importing the raw materials, if you're importing the modules, or you're importing the polysilicon wafers, or you're importing the windmills, or you're importing the blades, then by the time you win the SECI tender, to the time you implement your project, if you're importing, the input cost is not in your control. And that's where you see a lot of the projects have become unviable. Because of the competitive nature in which the bidding happens, nowadays solar tenders are going for as little as 2 rupees, and wind tenders are going for 3 rupees, right, per unit. And the maths is very, very thin. The margins are very thin. And the only way to counter this uncertainty is by localizing. And that's why, the work Suzlon has done and the work now many others are doing on the solar side is actually manufacturing the raw materials in India. And then you're selling power in rupees, and you're buying your raw material in rupees as well. So you're making your rupee return, which you sign up for, which for us is always a mid-teen return on equity, and low double-digit IRR is project IRR is what we look at in rupees. Now that's on the wind side. That's on the renewable side. On the car side, the story is very similar. Today, if you want to scale EVs in India, you have to make the car at 13,000 to 15,000 euros. If you don't hit the 13 to 15,000 euro price point, which is 15 lakh rupees roughly, you are not going to achieve scale in the country. If you look at India, 4.5 million cars got sold in India in calendar year 25. Out of that 4.5 million, 4.2 million cars were less than 15 lakh rupees. So it's very, very less than 15,000 euros. So it's very clear that if you want to scale, you need to be at the right price in India. And again, in EVs, the biggest challenge is how much you're importing from China. Today, you look at the rupee has depreciated, it's become 91 to the dollar. The yuan is actually appreciating. So container freight is not in your control. Today, you do your maths at $800 container freight, at 89 rupees, you end up importing at $1,200 container freight at 91 rupees, right? So the only solution again for this is to localize. And other than the cell technology, the lithium-ion cell, which today is a deeply, tightly guarded state secret of China, everything else is available in India. Our auto component industry is very evolved. They have done phenomenal work, made phenomenal advancements. But if we don't localize, then you can never be competitive, you can never make money in anything. So I think the challenge is how quickly can Indian companies localize? And how quickly can Indian companies, including JSW, I'll be the first to admit that we are part of the problem, start investing in R&D. We are very used to going to Davos, meeting a German, taking their technology, meeting a Japanese, taking their technology, going to a Chinese, taking their technology, doing incremental innovation in India, which we call Jugaad, and saying we've done R&D. But that's not R&D. So if India wants to go from a $4 trillion economy to a 10 trillion and then a $20 trillion economy, groups like Suzlon, which does much more than us, groups like ours, Tata's, Adani's, Reliance, Birla's, have to invest 2 to 3% of their turnover on R&D, and the government has to give us tax breaks for investing in R&D. So this is my,
Absolutely,
push.
absolutely right. In fact, just earlier in the day, we were talking about how, in India, our budget for R&D is like some 7-8%, and China is like 20% plus. And the only way to bridge that gap is the private sector. There's only so much governments can do. So absolutely right. Indian issues, Indian solutions, and you're actually hearing firsthand from these great industrialists how they're solving for it in India. And Mr. Tanti, I want to bring you in here because you talked about the need for long-term capital. You talked about the need for policy initiatives. We talked earlier about in the day about green labeling. Carbon credits. What if you had to send a message to Mr. Naidu, if you had to send a message to Prime Minister Modi, what is those policy changes that you require to scale even further?
Just to pick also from where Parth left, I think, and I'll tell you a little bit of the experience we've had in the last 30 years in building the wind industry to a level that today, almost 85% local content is achieved. And we've been doing that for over 10 years now. And this has helped us in tough times like today, where, multipolar worlds, a lot of dynamics, things can change. You can't plan your business. So I think our founder had that vision right in the 90s that, we have to focus on R&D. I think that's what was the crux of the way when we started. And at that point in time, there was not a viable technology, which in the early 90s, where you could really make cost efficient. Although in the Western world, there were technologies, but the problem was, as Parth mentioned, India is very sensitive to the cost side of things. And making it at a global standard, at a price point which India can afford, is a very engineering challenge to really make that happen. And I think it took us almost 5 years to kind of get to that point before we saw that now we have a product, technology, a good portion of local content. We started close to about 60% then. At that time, it was almost zero in the early days, Everything was all imported. So I think it's important that you have that conviction on whatever technology you are believing that you want to make it happen. And then really you have to work hard to kind of drive that cost and efficiency, and it takes time and effort to get there. And I think R&D is the crux. I think largely we see that in India that's not the kind of large focus. And also I would say other way around that there is a little bit of lack of pride, I would say. We still tend to believe something from imported is better. I think that's very unfortunate. And I can tell you with confidence today that for the past 20 years, the kind of product we make at Suzlon, we compete with the best in the world. I mean, we've installed almost 6 gigawatts of wind turbines in 17 countries globally. And we've competed with, all the top brands. And we are at par. And also, just earlier today, we got kind of the award for being the most sustainable wind energy company in the world amongst the top 10. We got the top rank 10. So, thank you. And I think even the product that we are making, I think today the carbon intensity of a Suzlon turbine is the lowest in the world. Yeah. But that has to go at a design thinking. Then you can get it. And not just in terms of pure design, but where are you going to manufacture, which content of raw material you're going to use. So it's a whole reverse kind of thought process that you bring. So I think those are the things that we're looking at. Taking to your second question, I think, we've had ups and downs as far as carbon trading is concerned. I think we've not kind of been able to get the plot correct on that yet. But I think there's huge potential in that space. I think if we can even build a India-centric market and then collaborate with other countries, that is definitely an area where, and I also our Prime Minister has kind of picked that up as a very important area, and I'm hoping, as we go along with the budgets and moving forward, this will shape up pretty well. The other two, as part of the upcoming budget, the recommendations that we've given, and I'm hopeful we'll make progress on that, is last year we had the National Mission for Manufacturing, which got announced. Not much traction we've been able to achieve in the last 1 year. I'm hoping that now we take it to the next level. And I think we have to pick up, few sectors where we believe, we can really be a meaningful player in the world. And then put all our energy into that. Today, not in many products we can say world depends on India. And that's why when you sit for your negotiation, as today it's called your pack of cards, you have nothing on your ground. And that's why you become irrelevant. And people can talk anything for you. So I think it's very important that we create that pack of cards on our side, pick those 4-5 industries, put all our muscle power on that. I think we have all the ingredients in India to make it happen. I think if we wrap that up, pick up those 3-4, and again, wind is a great example. I think the latest forecast also says that India can actually contribute 10% of the global supply chain for wind by 2030 itself, and which can go to about 20% by 2035. So we have to pick up our industries which can really deliver the modern kind of performance at a global stage, and focus has to get onto R&D and supply chain development. And also, and again, another thing, like the rare earth material, this is the other topic which comes up. I mean, because we had that day one design philosophy of making with materials which are available in India, we don't have any issues with rare earth material. It's all there. So again, fundamentally, you have to get that into your philosophy and pick up something where you want to be the global best. And I think once we have that mindset, then definitely we will see several such kind of sectors developing out of India.
And solutions which are specific to India, yes. Right?
But again, there I would just warn a little bit that while you make for a specific solution for India, but at a design philosophy, you have to make for the world. It is very important that you benchmark with the best in the world and make sure from a price and performance point you can beat them at a delivery at their doorstep. And only when you can do that, you will be able to make the best for India also.
So I'm going to create a summary of this discussion and send it to PMO, because I think they would have heard from you individually, but the power of hearing it from a panel that is discussing it together is very, very powerful. And on that note, I want you to finish your policy suggestion that you started with, but we moved on.
Actually, this discussion has triggered a very different set of synapses in my mind.
That's great.
I think the world economy is changing extremely dramatically right now, and artificial intelligence is going to change everything. I'm very optimistic about India. We've invested in a company that looks at AI human resources around the world, and the #1 generator of AI human resources will be India. We need to think about how the grid is changing. The grid is not the grid of 10 years ago. Electrons are going to be generated everywhere, stored everywhere, used everywhere. Look at the rooftop revolution, 2.5 gigs, increasing very rapidly in India, finally. So what will happen, I bet, when great groups like Jindal and Suzlon are here, and Jayant's great, and you're, 5 years from now, you'll be talking about what you're doing in AI. That's what you're going to be talking about. And that's where we can kick ass right now. There's no reason why. Partially because the Americans, and I love and respect them, for whatever reason, have decided to take a Long Beach holiday as far as renewable energy is concerned. And India is the great growth market. China has a distorted capital market and very low returns on capital for investors. The US is out of the game in terms of many sectors, not for every sector. And some of you are US renewables investors, thank God. There are some powerful developers and investors still in the game. And obviously data center development, now they started to talk about gas as a transitional fuel again after 20 years. That was 20 years ago they were talking about that. We thought it'd be an obsolete conversation by today. Anyway, but this shift towards the digital world will transform everything. And we will be the leaders of that in our country. I would also say that if I look at our real estate operations in Bangalore, 20 years ago they were doing BPO. They were doing software services. Today, We have 400 of the Fortune 500 companies have 550 capability centers doing design. There's nothing to do with BPO. Fundamental IP design is happening in Bangalore. We are generating these people. These people with these entrepreneurs are going to change the face of India. 5 years from now, we're going to have a totally different discussion. And that's exciting because these will be digital service, energy service companies. Kraken will be seen as a small prototype for what India innovated. And that's really fun and exciting. And we'll take that to the world. One more point on geopolitics. You know, we've had a very friendly 5,000-year-old relationship with China. I only have good feelings for China. But China is no longer considered necessarily reliable in European grids, right? Why do you want Chinese transformers in a European grid? India is still trusted. Now, I know there's some shenanigans around trade, and I don't want to comment beyond my pay grade right now. But I think it'll all settle. India is fundamentally a trustworthy country that has no geopolitical ambitions except for doing good business and trying to add value to the world. And I think the opportunity for us is endless. And you know, when I started my career and set up Morgan Stanley in the early 90s, we were the 17th largest economy. Today we're the 4th, we'll be the 3rd 2 years from now. We were 25% of world GDP. In 1800, I think we're on our way back. Thanks.
Jochen, if this doesn't convince you to start putting trillions of dollars in, you know, the Indian sector, absolutely. Then I don't know what else would. I realize we've run out of time. I'll give you the last word after we take a few questions. I'll have the policy makers, you know, just give the last word. But
Work? Yeah. Thank you very much for the distinction of calling me a friend, Uday. May I endow the honor on you calling the green sheep in your family. And may this green sheep please take over all of the business in India. What you do is truly inspiring and truly, it warms me from the bottom of my heart. Mr. Minister, I wish you were our Minister of Finance. But there's just one small, the minister, we have 2 ministers, we're ex-minister. But just want to be clear, I was making lots of jokes before, but it is dead serious, right? I am in this business because we will not survive as a species. We'll have 67-meter higher sea levels. It is dead serious. And just to avoid confusion, when I say impact investing, this consists of 2 words. One is impact, and you would never suspect me to imply negative impact. And when I say investing, I mean above market returns. I would never say below market returns. I've never met the Yeti, and there's no such human being or institutional investors that will agree a below market return. You'll never get a penny more for green, right? And so my question to you is what we discussed in the previous panel. How about we de-risk by you joining the European Free Trade Zone, including the CBAM around the UK and New Zealand and Australia, and then at 200 euros a ton for carbon credit, you have part of your revenue streams are carbon credits that doesn't matter what your currency does. And as far as decentralization is concerned, why don't we work together with Europe and India and create an Indian, European clean industrialization fund, which leapfrogs the Chinese. We have a technology that produces green hydrogen for your steel factories at $3 a kilogram at the level of methane from waste. We have a technology making super thin wafers for space at half the cost of the Chinese with twice the efficiency. So we love the Chinese, the whole world, but let's team up. What do you think about the carbon tax and dividend in a joint free trade zone? And what would be the level of carbon price that you think would work on condition that the charge is returned to the citizen, right? If you charge 200, each citizen gets 200 euros a month. What would be the level, and where do you see his perspective of working between the EU and India?
Mr. Sinha, can I get you to respond to that?
Thank you, Jochen. And we discussed it, as you know, a little bit in the previous panel as well. There are various mechanisms that have been proposed, which are all economically feasible. The challenge is that they are not politically feasible. And the reason is very simple. You won't get voters in the global north saying that our money is going to go to poor people in Nigeria or Bangladesh or Indonesia or India for that matter, right? So I wish we had that universality, and that people would have the economic sense to understand that if I want to mitigate carbon, that if I'm investing, whatever thousands and thousands of dollars or euros in Germany, I could do it as you were giving the example of the lady in Africa who could mitigate the same amount of carbon with, not thousands of euros, but in tens of euros, right? So economically, it makes perfect sense. Economically, it's feasible to design these mechanisms where capital would come from the north to the south. Politically, it's very difficult to pull it off. And that's why I think all of us have a very heavy burden of responsibility, that we have to build the enthusiasm and the excitement, particularly in the global north, so that because, in fact, you've put the carbon in the atmosphere, that you are willing to now pay for either mitigating it or actually through regeneration, taking it out of the atmosphere. So that moral responsibility, which of course was part of the whole UN Paris Agreement, common but differentiated responsibilities, is in fact accepted in the global north and happens. The current world environment and the discussion we were having earlier about the orange man is not moving in that direction. But I think that is the responsibility we all face of really continuously bringing up this set of issues.
Yeah, I think, and I would just like to add there that we mustn't give up, and I think if we can even get one leader to start talking for that collaboration from the Northern Hemisphere, I think South is ready. So I think we just need to make that dialogue happen, and I think rest will then start, going from there.
That's why these gentlemen are here at Davos.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think geopolitics is driving Europe and India closer. We have shared values, and you can understand what I mean by that. However, in addition to that, my point about China, so our group is exporting renewable energy infrastructure like your group is. We're on the electronic side, you're into Europe. And we're doing it right now. And we're doing it very successfully. And the reason is Europeans are not competing against the Europeans. They're competing against Chinese. We're competing against Chinese. They don't want the Chinese equipment in their grids. So that means that Europe becomes a natural partner to India, even without the more complex CBAM plus, even with a simple trade agreement that prioritizes a verticalization of an industrial trade corridor and perhaps some innovation together where we have tons of engineers that can work with you, we can create a more limited cooperative pathway that may not have some of the same problems about fiscal transfer.
And I'll give you an example. I mean, in wind energy, when we started in the early 90s, almost that time, in fact, China was not in the picture. In fact, some of the Western players and ourselves, we set up plants in China and taught them how to make windmills, and the story is different now. But when we started, almost the entire technology and production, everything was in Europe. Yeah. So when we worked with several of our sub-supplier systems over here and convinced them to come to India, we also set up industrial zones as a group to get all the ancillaries to come there and make in India. The ones that really agreed to do that, because this was purely private to private, no government involved at that time. So the ones which risks and took that deal that, okay, I want to go to India and start my manufacturing. Today, actually, those companies are surviving because of that decision against the Chinese. And they are exporting, they are making whatever they are producing in India, hardly 20% they are selling in India. I mean, I have 2 gearbox companies, world's top 2, making wind turbine gearbox, largest capacity in India, selling to the world. That's how they are surviving today. Generators, control systems, all of them. So even purely from a approach, I think we must not give up. And I think if we keep trying, if we get one political leader to kind of work with starting up that system, I think convincing India we are ready, so we can make it happen.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Parth is sitting there saying, I'm localizing everything, so. But any last words, Mr. Bharath, Parth? I know there are a lot of nightcaps going across the town here, so I would like to wrap it up with last words from you.
Last words, I would say, if you want speed, choose Andhra Pradesh. Because that's the only thing, I mean, if you see in last 18 months, in terms of the investment in US dollars, it is more than $120 billion worth of investments are committed or coming in just 18 months to Andhra Pradesh. So the best thing that happened is the speed. We are giving approvals just compared to any other states. It's on war foot basis. You discuss, it's done. So we are not concentrating on MOUs. We want the companies to come and set up there, and we are getting it grounded. That's the speed that we are working.
Yeah, and I think I have first-hand experience of that in the state. I think amongst the states we worked, it's jet speed. And you don't feel like you are talking to a political group. They run it like a CEO office. So congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much. A big applause to all the gentlemen here. The testosterons were kept low. And this is billions of dollars of time right here. So I really, really appreciate you taking out the time this late in the evening. Thank you very much. Sorry for overrunning the panel.
Thank you very much to Eversource Capital for your sponsorship, your engagement. We're so glad you're here. In the lobby, we have some refreshments for this audience in the back right corner. So please stay a while and enjoy. Thank you.
From extractive to regenerative, we rise, we rise. Global regenerative innovation alliance. Join the GRIA alliance. We regenerate. From extractive systems, taking it all to regenerative futures where ecosystems call from short-term profit, blind to the cost, to long-term value. Nothing is lost. From concrete thinking, disconnected minds, to living cities where nature and humans align. From separation, fear and division, to collaboration, trust and shared vision. Global regeneration. We regenerate, restore the systems, it's not too late. From depletion, burnout, running dry to renewal, abundance, letting life multiply. Cities as labs, bioregions connect, knowledge and capital, moving with respect, not just talk. We activate, this is the decade where we choose our fate. Not innovation, regeneration, not isolation, collaboration, not the status quo, transformation. This is a regenerative renaissance. Global regenerative innovation.